You're watching Republican National Convention coverage from Milwaukee. I'm Frederica Freiberg. We'll stay with NewsHour coverage, but we want to check in now with Here and Now senior political reporter Zach Schultz, who comes to us from Milwaukee. And hi, Zach. So tonight is the culmination, of course, of the Republican National Convention, with Donald Trump speaking for an hour and a half, I understand, starting at 9 p.m. Final day also, of course, for everyone else there. What did the Wisconsin delegation have to say about kind of their final day?
Well, there's a lot of energy here. They've been saying this is but a pretty exciting week. Obviously, it's the home state. They get to show off their state to the rest of the delegates from around the country and brag a little bit about Wisconsin and Milwaukee. They've got a long day planned for them. Even after tonight, they have a special concert available with the local casino. So there's some people that were told, hey, you leave your hotel room at 9 this morning, you may not get back in there until 2 a.m. But the impression seems to be pretty positive. We also heard from Congressman Scott Fitzgerald, who represents the area just west of here in Waukesha County, and he said he's been doing a lot of outreach with other delegates from around the country, and that the response from them has been overwhelmingly positive about their experience here.
What an opportunity to show the rest of the country the city of Milwaukee, and as Milwaukee goes, so goes the state of Wisconsin, right? I have had more comments about what a wonderful convention this has been.
What about local businesses? Did they meet expectations?
I think that depends on which businesses you're talking about. It's completely hit or miss. When we leave the secure perimeter each night, we walk by some places that are packed. All the tables are full. It's clear that they're doing really well. And you go a little further, a couple blocks out, and it's empty. And we've heard that from around the city, that some places that are normally would have good business with just the local population are really struggling this week. So it just depends on who has them and who doesn't.
We took note of the schedule for scheduled speakers, and Diane Hendricks is listed as an everyday American, and she spoke tonight. What about her being an everyday American?
Well, that's kind of an odd label. Diane Hendricks is a Republican mega donor from Beloit. She's also an extraordinarily successful entrepreneur and business owner. She and her late husband own ABC Supply. She's Wisconsin's wealthiest woman, worth more than $21 billion. She's heavily involved in state politics. So to say that she's everyday really doesn't compute, except in the sense that she's not a politician.
All right. Zach Schultz, thanks so much, and thanks for all of your work this week. Tomorrow, join Here and Now at 7 for a one-hour special with full coverage of the convention and what it means for Wisconsin.